Chapter 31, Heart of Tranquil Water. Grabbing hold of the book from Shinbairu, Elder Mo took a glance at it and his entire body trembled. This should be impossible. All right, is there still anything you are unsure of that you would like to consult? If not, I'll be leaving. Zhang Xuan looked at them with puzzlement reflecting on his face. Are these two fellows sick? If they wanted to consult him, they should have come up with some harder questions yet. They chose to ask those that have been answered within the books. He didn't even have to churn his brain to derive out an answer for them. How boring. To think that one of them is a librarian and an expert while the other one is a reputable and popular teacher Pui. To be unable to match up to a transcender like me, they are truly lacking in knowledge. If you don't mind, I have another question that has been plaguing me. How would you interpret circulating a cycle of chi, reflecting the sight of 10,000 creations? Suppressing the disbelief in his mind, Elder Mo continued to ask. Another elder has raised this question with him a few days ago after being stumped by it. He had been scavenging the Compendium Pavilion to seek an answer to it, but to no avail. Thus, he could only depart from the library dispirited. Now that the young lad before him had answered several questions, he couldn't resist bringing it up to him. You don't even know that? Zhang Xuan looked at him as though he was looking at an idiot. That is the utmost basics of cultivation. All right. It refers to the phenomenon where while one's chi is circulating through one's body in a complete cycle, one's mind would seem to be in a state of wandering around the entire world as they comprehend the rules behind creationism. These words are recorded in Senior Bai Ming's Theories of Blood and Chi. The book is on the 27th shelf and the explanation is on the 69th page. Circulating a cycle of chi, reflecting the sight of 10,000 creations. This was one of the few flawless teachings that were in the Phi 2-1 Dan cultivation technique manuals, thus it left quite an impression with Zhang Xuan. It happened that a predecessor of Hongshan Academy had once deciphered it, so he paid additional notice to it. Why would an elder, who is the sentinel of the compendium library, need to direct such an easy question towards him? Elder Mo didn't reply to his words immediately and instead, just like Shinbairu, walked into the Compendium Pavilion hurriedly. A short moment later, he found the book titled Theories of Blood and Chi and flipped it over to the 69th page. His body staggered. It was exactly as he described. A few days ago, that elder flipped through many different secret manuals, but couldn't find an answer to his question. Never in his dreams would he have imagined that it would be recorded in an obscure book. Such an obscure book. To think that he would have read it, to the extent of even remembering the pages. Elder Mo felt the world spinning around him and everything seemed so ludicrous to him in this instant. If it wasn't for his consideration for his image, he might be tugging on the ends of his hair at this moment. A moment ago, he accused the other party of causing trouble in the library. In the end, not only was he reading books properly, he even memorized the contents contained within it. He felt a fiery sting on his face and fervently wished for a burrow to appear, so that he could hide in it. Was he really the same teacher who scored a 0 in the teacher qualification examination? If Zhang Xuan could be the last with such a level of knowledge, didn't this mean that he wasn't even qualified to get 0 marks? Alright, in the future, read more books. The answers to the questions that you have posed are all recorded in them. Seeing their stunned expressions, Zhang Xuan lectured them in a deep tone. Then, he shook his head and said, if there is nothing else, I'll be leaving. After saying those words, he lifted his legs to walk away. He was simply way too hungry. If he didn't get food anytime soon, he might really faint from starvation. Zhang Xuan Loshi, wait for me. Only now did Shinbairu recover from her shock and she swiftly caught up with Zhang Xuan. What else do you want? Zhang Xuan said in a slightly annoyed tone. Is this woman sick or something? I had already clarified your queries for you. Are you done yet? Can't you see that I am hungry and would like to eat? I have yet to eat as well. Do you want to share a meal with me? Shinbairu gritted her teeth. She was the Aphrodite of the academy. Many men had asked her out for a meal, only to be rejected by her. She had not even accepted a single one of the innumerable meal dates from Shang Bin. The shock that this young man generated in her today made her curious about him. Thus she decided to ask him out, so as to make use of the opportunity to see what it was that caused the changes in him. You want me to treat you? Zhang Xuan looked at her with a bizarre expression. What are you thinking of? If you want to eat, use your own money. How can one's skin be so thick? You had questions for me, so I answered them for you. You still expect me to treat you after that? How can you be so shameless? In his previous life, he had researched numerous action films, but even so, he was a true shut-in. He had never truly come in contact with the opposite gender before, so how could he understand the thoughts of a lady? You seeing the gaze of the young man and hearing his words, Shinbairu almost shot out a mouthful of blood and fainted. I am a beautiful lady, alright? Beautiful ladies have special privileges. So many people had invited me out and I turned down every single one of them, yet, when I ask you out, you look at me as though I am a monster. Shameless. Shameless your head. Is there anyone in the world who would term a beautiful lady as such? The lady was on the verge of going berserk. Fine, I'll treat you, okay? I'll treat you. Grinding her silver teeth together, Shinbairu spat out these words. You treat me? Zhang Xuan paused for a moment. Due to his previous self being the worst teacher in the academy, his income was nearly negligible. As such, it wasn't a bad thing to have someone treat him thus. He nodded his head. It's fine with me, but I want a luxurious meal. I won't eat just any ordinary mantis and fried pancakes. Shinbairu went berserk again. Mantu and fried pancakes? The heck with it. Let's go. She didn't want to say anything anymore. She's afraid that if she continued talking to him, she would die from anger. The Library of Heaven's Path allowed him to see through the flaws of all skills and everyone's Mingmen. However, it was unable to peer into the heart of a lady. Zhang Xuan was oblivious to the fact that he had made Hongshan Academy's #1 beauty furious to the point of vomiting blood with just a few simple words of his. Following behind Shinbairu, Zhang Xuan walked along the pavement towards the entrance of the campus. Although the night scenery at Hongshan Academy wasn't as radiant as the school in his previous life, it was still quite an exquisite sight under the illumination of the moon shrouded by spirit energy. The atmosphere seemed exceptionally tranquil and peaceful. In his previous life, he was surrounded by hubble bubble and smog could be found everywhere. It was very different from the serenity one could experience here. Zhang Xuan subconsciously immersed himself in this enchanting scenery. Walking in front, Shen Bairu thought that the young man following behind her would intentionally ask some questions to break the awkward silence. However, after the absence of sound for a long period of time, she couldn't resist turning around to take a look. Sneaking a glance, she was taken aback. The young man walked quietly as the moonlight illuminated his figure, the image of it reminiscent of a serene painting. This will of mine too, Dan, heart of tranquil water? Her eyes narrowed. Fighters didn't just cultivate their sentient physical body. What was even more crucial to them was their mind. The stronger one's mind was, the greater control they have over their cultivation. As a result, one's cultivation could surge even more swiftly, thus allowing them to reach greater heights in the future. That's precisely the reason why experts classified the will of mind into many different levels. Heart of tranquil water was the Dan realm of it. The mind was harder to train than battle techniques. It was said that of the entire academy, only the principal had reached such a level. Even Shen Bairu, who was reputed to possess unparalleled talents and had reached Fighter 5 Dan pinnacle by the age of 20, second only to the renowned young genius Bai Wanai, was still a long way away from will of mind to Dan. Initially, she thought that it would be too difficult for a second person to reach such a level, but never in her dreams would she dare to think that the trash teacher in the mouths of others would actually reach such heights. If not for the fact that she witnessed it personally, she would never believe it. How is this possible? That is will of mind to Dan. It is a height harder to climb to than Fighter 6 Dan 7 Dan. Could it be that he isn't a trash at all, but he intentionally scored a 0 in the teacher qualification examination, so as to make use of the insults and derision of others to temper his will? Suddenly, a peculiar thought popped up in her mind. In the past, she didn't have much contact with Zhang Xuan Loshi, so she wasn't really aware of his affairs today. Through their conversation, she realized that he was not only knowledgeable, he had even reached will of mind to Dan heart of tranquil water. That was a level many dream about, but never achieved in their lifetime. Looks like his teacher qualification examination results were all feigned. His true goal was to make use of the scorn of others to train his mind, so as to break into the will of mind to Dan. She found it unbelievable that a person with such will of mind would be unable to achieve a pass in the simple teacher qualification examination. Continue putting on an act, see how I'll expose you. Thinking about how she was duped by this fellow, she gritted her silver teeth tightly. This fellow was simply too hateful. She was resolute to look for a chance to expose him before others. Mantu, on vertical bar. Basically, he means he won't just eat street food / from vendors by the street. Wanai is a title granted from the emperor to princes of the country. Chapter 32, Hongshan Pavilion. Heart of tranquil water? Very quickly, Zhang Xuan's consciousness returned from a mystical spiritual world and his eyes lit up. Having read so many books, it was natural that he would understand the significance of the will of mind. I am a transcender having experienced life and death. It is natural that my will would be stronger than most. Furthermore, I cultivate in heaven's path divine art, so my Zenki is as pure as clear water. It is normal to reach will of mind to Dan so quickly. He was overjoyed over it, but it didn't come as a surprise. If he were to still be like the other ordinary folks when he possessed the godly tool named Library of Heaven's Path, he might as well buy a blob of tofu and commit suicide on it. Remaining silent the entire way, they soon arrived at the entrance of the academy, Hongshan Pavilion. Seeing the two enormous words before him, Zhang Xuan nodded his head. There are recollections of this tavern in the memories of his previous self. Hongshan Pavilion was the most luxurious tavern in Hongshan Academy. Every single meal here would blow a hole in one's wallet due to his meager pay. His previous self had never been here before. Initially, he thought that Shen Bairu would just bring him to some casual restaurant. He never thought that she would be so generous to bring him here. As expected of a renowned tavern, the furnishings inside were majestic. Numerous night illumination pearls of the size of a fist were embedded within the walls of the tavern, making it seem as though it was still daytime. They sat down at a table beside the windows. What would you like? Shen Bairu gazed at the young man before her. Anything. Zhang Xuan gestured. Since you're the one treating, I will eat anything that you order. Never been here before. He didn't know what dishes were good here since someone else was paying. He couldn't be bothered to think about it. Seeing the expression of the young man, which seemed resolute to take advantage of her wealth, Shen Bairu felt her rage welling up. However, as this wasn't a good situation for her to flare up, she could only nod her head and casually order a few dishes. Zhang Loshi, was the 0 in your teacher qualification examination intentional? After ordering, Shen Bairu stared at the young man before her fixedly. Intentional? Unsure of why the latter would ask such a question, Zhang Xuan paused for a moment before replying. Of course not. Back then, during the period of the teacher qualification examination, he had yet to transcend over, and his previous self didn't possess the Library of Heaven's Path either. Thus, it was impossible for the results to just be an act. Knowing that he would deny it, Shen Bairu laughed coldly in her mind. Denying it? See how I will expose your true colors. Since we're free now, I happen to have some questions that I have been unable to answer. Zhang Loshi, would you mind helping me clarify my doubts? An idea flashed through Shen Bairu's mind and she asked, go ahead. Since the other party was treating him to a meal, he should answer a question or two of hers in return. Alright, if one is unable to gather spirit energy in their meridians while cultivating, Shen Bairu pondered for a moment before asking a question. You don't know this as well? Hearing that the question was even simpler than the ones from before, Zhang Xuan stared at the other party in bewilderment before casually explaining, I have 9 methods here that can solve the problem. Soon, he finished his explanation. 9 methods. Hearing how the young man casually threw out 9 methods at her, Shen Bairu's face warped. Despite being knowledgeable, she was only aware of 3 methods, yet the other party was able to list out 9 in a single breath. Furthermore, there were a few in the mix that were completely foreign to her. She found the entire situation inconceivable. That then, what if one is unable to guide the flow of spirit energy into the meridians after absorbing it into one's body? Forcefully suppressing her astonishment, she asked once more. That is simple too. I have 8 ways of resolving that. Shang Xuan started to explain. Firstly, Shinbairu's slim body trembled. She had prepared herself mentally for this, but she still found the situation insane. The methods he brought up are incredible. If these were to spread out, it would cause an uproar in the world of cultivation. Since you know so many methods, why weren't you able to list a single one of them out during the teacher qualification examination and instead scored a 0? Forcibly suppressing her shock, Shinbairu asked. The 2 questions that she just raised were the exact same questions listed in the previous teacher qualification examination. Since he was aware of so many solutions, why couldn't he fill them in? Not to mention, to end up with a 0? King. Only now did Shang Xuan come to a realization. So these questions were from the teacher qualification examinations, as it was part of the memories of his previous self. Although he found the questions familiar, he wasn't able to pinpoint exactly where he saw them. That, just as he is stumped for an answer, the dishes that were ordered previously were placed on the table one after another. Let's eat first. Looking at the appearance of the dishes and taking in their fragrance, Shang Xuan's appetite was whetted up. Couldn't be bothered with these troublesome matters. He started to dig in. Seeing how that fellow was more delighted to see those delicacies than her, Shinbairu pouted. Countless people had invited her out for a meal, using all kinds of reasons and excuses just to stay with her a moment longer, yet this fellow was here just for the meal itself. Shang Shao, don't be angry anymore. I have applied for the Enlightenment trial and the academy will bring Liu Yang over for inspection tomorrow. Shang Xuan would definitely be severely punished. As for that lunatic, Elder Shang has already lent you his beloved pet. When you meet him tomorrow, you will surely be able to give him an unforgettable lesson, so you should be overjoyed instead. Let's go. I'll treat you to a grand meal to make up for the sufferings you underwent today, after which, we will find a few girls and hee. Shao, young master. 2 young men were walking along the pavement of the academy. The one leading in front had a swollen and bruised face with clear panda eyes. It was apparent to see that he had fought with someone and got hit on the face. The one following behind him had his body bent forward and was assuming a subservient attitude. The one who was speaking at the moment was the latter. There was a giant lion strutting proudly behind the 2 of them, emanating a ferocious aura. It induced great pressure and fear in one before one could even approach it. They were Shang Bin, who created trouble in the classroom earlier in the morning, only to be beaten up by Yao Han, and Cao Xan, who was desperate to get Shang Xuan into deep trouble. As for the lion behind them, it was Elder Shang Chen's beloved pet, the Tier 6 savage beast Sky-Shattering Lion. In this world, there were apothecary, blacksmith and many other occupations. Every single occupation was noble in its own right and well respected by the others. Of these occupations, Elder Shang Chen was a beast tamer. This occupation allowed one to tame savage beasts and spirit beasts and control them, turning them into a part of one's fighting prowess. It was a formidable occupation that was noteworthy compared to the rest. This Sky-Shattering Lion was a beast pet that Elder Shang Chen had trained. After being done in by the berserk Yao Han, he was aware that he was unable to match up to him in terms of strength. Thus, he approached his grandfather to borrow a beast pet for his usage. Hearing those falling words, Shang Bin nodded his head as he spat with an aggressive expression. That Yao Han must be taught a good lesson. Shang Xuan as well. Of course, with this Sky-Shattering Lion, what does Shang Shao has to fear? Cao Xan chuckled. A Tier 6 savage beast was equivalent to a Fighter 6 Dan expert, perhaps even surpassing them slightly. Even if the berserk butler Yao Han wasn't weak, it wouldn't be an easy feat for him to defeat the Sky-Shattering Lion even in his top form. Needless to say, in his current state, earlier in the day, he was wrapped up like a mummy, not any better than Shang Shao's current situation. Sky-Shattering Lion is my grandfather's beast pet. You are also aware of its wild nature, which makes it is a difficult pet to tame. Grandfather may have handed him over to me, but it would only make a move when someone attacks me currently. I am still incapable of ordering it around. Looking at the ferocious and mighty Sky-Shattering Lion behind him, Shang Bin felt a little helpless. Savage beasts might be strong, but they were very proud life forms. Unless one was stronger than them or had the occupation of a beast tamer, it was impossible to make them listen to one's orders willingly. That may not be necessarily so if we entertain it with good alcohol and food. It might just listen to your commands. Cao Xan smiled. Let's hope that it'll be like that. In the midst of their struggling and chattering, a massive tavern soon appeared before them. We're here. A magnificent signboard sat behind them as they walked into the tavern. Hongshan Pavilion. Chapter 33, Feigning Generosity. Shang Gongcai, you're here, come on in. Before the 2 men and 1 beast stepped into the tavern, a smiling middle-aged man welcomed them with a smile. The manager of Hongshan Pavilion, Wu Chu. Give us a quiet location. Cao Xan, Loxi and I want to have a good drink together. Shang Bin said. Over here. Wu Chu quickly brought them to their seats. Shang Shao, every time I am here, this Wu Chu would behave smugly and disregard my presence. This time, why does he? Cao Xan couldn't resist asking. Hongshan Pavilion might just be a tavern, but the powers backing it was not one to scoff at. Otherwise, it was impossible for them to be operating their business in the compounds of Hongshan Academy at such a scale. In the past, when he was here to eat, Manager Wu would always disregard him, yet, this time, his back was bent forward and his attitude was of utmost respect. The disparity in his attitudes made him doubt if he was in reality. You should have heard that there was once an Elder Hong Hao in the academy. Shang Bin said. Cao Xan nodded his head. Hongshan Academy was founded by Hongshan after his death. His descendants sustained his heritage as a result. The elders who have the surname of Hong tended to be of more esteemed standing in the academy. He had heard of this Elder Hong Hao previously. He was an extremely powerful individual and had once vied for the principal seat. However, afterwards, for some unknown reasons, he suddenly resigned from his position as an elder and there was no news on him anymore. After resigning as an elder, he started a tavern. He used to be best buddies with my grandfather, so Manager Wu would welcome me with respect whenever I'm here. Shang Bin declared gleefully. So that's the reason. Cao Xun nodded his head. No wonder this Hongshan pavilion managed to grow to such a scale. It was opened by the previous elder Hong Hao, to be received by the manager of such a huge tavern. It is definitely something glorious, Just as he was in the midst of enjoying service he had never experienced before, Cao Xun suddenly froze and his face gradually grew darker. What happened? Shang Bin gazed at him in puzzlement. That should be Zhang Xuan, right? How could he possibly have the qualifications to be dining here? Cao Xun pointed towards a table by the window. Zhang Xuan? Shang Bin glanced over as well upon seeing the young man. He caught sight of the figure seated together with him. His eyebrows shot upwards and rage surged from within. Why is she together with the trash? I had extended my invitation to her multiple times, but she kept rejecting me to think that she would be dining with someone else. Damn it. Damn it. As the grandson of an elder, a high-level teacher of the academy and a fighter 5 Danjinglai realm expert, he had invited Shen Bairu for a meal multiple times. But she never agreed initially. He thought that she would never eat together with anyone. Never would he imagine that she would be sitting together with the renowned trash of the academy. He almost fainted from anger on the spot, slamming his table. He stood up, preparing to rush over to question her. However, he suddenly recalled Shen Bairu's temperament and immediately shriveled back to his seat. She held intense loath to those who disturb her. If he were to rush over to interrogate her like this, if she ended up getting provoked by his attitude and raged out at him, there would be no hope for his courtship. Shang Shi, oh, don't be angry. I have an idea that would reveal the true colors of Zhang Xuan before Shen Loshi. Furthermore, it can accentuate the majestic aura of Shang Shi. Oh. Cao Xun was a social expert, allowing him to see through the current situation in an instant. An idea flashed through his mind and he smiled as he tried to coax Shang Bin into action. What idea? This Zhang Xuan is definitely here to fawn on Shen Loshi by treating her to a meal. However, as a low-level teacher, how much money could he possibly earn? We only have to interfere slightly to make the final bill out of his reach to shame him before her. Afterwards, Shang Xia would appear and rescue her from the awkward situation. Shen Loshi's impression of Shang Xia would definitely improve. Perhaps the flower of love might even bloom as she runs into your embrace. Cao Xun revealed his plan. Good, let's do it your way then. Shang Bin's eyes lit up as he nodded his head in satisfaction. Not only would he be able to cripple his opponent, he would also be able to elevate his position in Shen Bairu's heart at the same time. This was truly a brilliant idea. Looks like this Cao Xun isn't simply capable at teaching, he also has a way with dealing with humans. Looks like he should be properly groomed in the future. Zhang Xuan didn't know of the scheme that was being plotted against him. Eating the delicacies on the table, he nodded his head in commendation. The cooking techniques here might not be as refined as the ones on Earth, but this world was rich in spirit energy, not to mention that the ingredients used in the dishes were fresh and delicious, thus providing a wholly different enjoyable eating experience. Soon, most of the dishes on the table had been cleaned up and a large portion of them was wiped clean by Zhang Xuan. Shen Bairu only nibbled on a small bit of them symbolically. Seeing how this fellow was only obsessed with eating, disregarding even her presence, Shen Bairu curled her lips in anger. Initially, she thought that he was feigning it to attract her attention. Only now did she realize that he had never thought of her as an important matter. Regardless of whether it was the genius teachers or star teachers of the academy, they would intentionally fawn on her and offer her favors. Yet, this fellow, the worst-ranking teacher of the entire academy, treated her as though she is nothing, making her grind her silver teeth in anger. If it wasn't for her etiquette, she would have already sent both of her legs flying towards his body. The more she thought about it, the more furious she got. She knew that if she were to see him continue eating, she would die of anger. She turned around and called out to the waiter, "Bill." A total of 1,280 gold coins. A waiter walked over. 1,280? Shen Bairu froze in shock. Why is it so expensive? Even for a high-level teacher like her, she only earned 1,000 gold coin every month. Yet, to eat away a month of salary in a single meal. How could it be so expensive? She had calculated it properly while she was ordering the dishes, and the bill wasn't supposed to even reach 100. How could it jump up to more than 1,000 in an instant? I'm sorry, but this bottle of wine here costs 1,200 gold coins by itself. The waiter explained. Previously, when the both of them were eating, a waiter came forth to ask if they wanted some wine. Shen Bairu thought that it would be fine to have some alcohol, so she nodded her head in agreement. How could she have possibly imagined that the wine would be that expensive? We were uninformed of the price of the wine you sent over. Shen Bairu's face looked extremely pale at this instant. No matter how foolish she could be, it was obvious that she had been had. If you are truly uninterested in it, you should have asked further about it beforehand. Since you didn't ask, we thought that you would be aware of its price, so we didn't say anything excessive. The waiter looked at her coldly. Seeing the attitude of the waiter, Shen Bairu knew that there's no point in kicking up a fuss. Instead, it might be bad for her reputation if she were to kick up a fuss on this matter. Thus, she whipped out her wallet and prepared to pay. Then, her face suddenly turned white and awkwardness exuded from her. I don't have sufficient money on me now. Why don't you keep it on my tab first? I will repay you after retrieving sufficient money. Today, she only intended to accomplish some reading at the Compendium Pavilion, so she didn't bring much money. After which, she met Zhang Xuan and consulted him on some matters. Due to the excessive shock then, she totally forgot about the matter. Recalling it only at this moment, she only had around 100 gold coins on her, far from the required 1,000 plus. Treating someone to a meal, yet not having sufficient money to foot the tab. She felt a fiery sting on her face as she fervently wished for a burrow to appear, so that she could hide inside it. Don't order food that you can't afford. Since you've ordered it, pay up. Don't even dream about eating for free here. The waiter harumphed. You. Shen Bairu's small face flushed in anger. What happened? At this moment, a stern voice sounded out. Shang Bin, accompanied by Cao Xun and the sky-shattering lion, walked over proudly with widened strides. Dressed in white, his hands were behind him and his head was tilted high. his posture exuding an aura of superiority in normal times. With his disposition and outer appearance, accompanied with the ferocious sky-shattering line following behind him, he would have looked like an elegant and dashing gentleman. However, at this very moment, his face was swollen red and his eyes were bruised black. Looking from afar, he looked indescribably ridiculous. However, he seemed oblivious to it and instead, strutted about proudly with a deep look in his eyes and a distanced aura. He walked forward and his eyes happened to chance upon Shinbairu's body. Feigning shock, he said, "Shinloshi, what a coincidence. You're here as well?" He turned around to look at the waiter and asked, "What happened here? It is unbecoming to be making a ruckus here." "Ah, so it is Shang Shao." The waiter leapt in fear. He no longer put on the pushy attitude from before and instead, revealed a careful demeanor as he explained, "It's like this, they had eaten but they do not have the money to foot the bill." "No money to foot the bill?" Shang Bin shook his head as a disappointed expression appeared on his face. He gazed at Zhang Xuan and said, "Zhang Loshi, it is not that I want to lecture you, but if you do not have the money, don't try to feign generosity and treat someone to a meal here. Look, you simply ended up embarrassing yourself. As the worst teacher in the academy, you might be used to it, but to bring shame to Shinloshi as well, don't you think you have gone a bit too far?" Seeing the arrogant look on the face of the fellow before him, Zhang Xuan paused for a moment before turning around to look at Shinbairu. "Sigh, he seems to be talking about you. If you don't have sufficient money, don't feign generosity. Look, you simply ended up embarrassing yourself." "You." Upon hearing Shang Bin's words, Shinbairu was already infuriated, yet to hear Zhang Xuan repeating the same words again, she almost exploded from all of the accumulated fury. She lifted her head and glared at the gleeful Shang Bin, who was trying to put on an impressive image to win her favor. Luo. She grinded her jade teeth together and roared, "Shang Bin, I dare you to say once more who the one feigning generosity is." Gongtsai, gentleman, usually used to address for young males. Chapter 34, Scam. "Ah?" Not expecting that the lady would be angered, Shang Bin was astonished. He immediately explained, "Shinloshi, I'm not talking about you, I'm talking about Zhang Xuan. If he doesn't have the money, he shouldn't be going around treating others. Look, he ended up getting stopped by the waiter. How embarrassing is that he is sullying the prestige of our academy." The more he spoke, the darker his goddess's face turned, to the point that it seemed as though she would erupt at any moment. Now Shang Bin was bewildered by the twist in the situation. At this moment, the waiter interrupted awkwardly, "Shang Shao, what?" Shang Bin glanced at him with a frown. Cough cough. "The one that is treating is Shinloshi," the waiter said. He received the order to cooperate with Shang Bin's show, yet he would have never expected that it would be the lady that had foot the tab. Before he could report it to him, Shang Bin had already rushed over, making it even more difficult to explain the situation to him. "Shinloshi is the one treating?" Shang Bin was horrified. His eyes widened in disbelief. "Are you for real?" He had been asking the goddess out to eat every day and yet she simply dismissed his invitations. What rights did the worst teacher of the academy have to be sharing a meal with her, not to mention having her treat him? Why? Just because I have no money to foot the tab means I'm feigning generosity and embarrassing myself, is it? Shinbairu glared at him coldly. She had been embarrassed in front of Zhang Xuan multiple times today and she had been dispirited over it all this while, yet this fellow just had to mock her. At such a moment she felt her rage on the verge of flying out of control. "No, that's not it." Shang Bin's face paled and he looked as though he was about to cry. Only now did he understand that he had accidentally insulted his goddess in the midst of trying to fawn on her. He immediately waved his hands as though to dispel the misunderstanding. "I didn't mean that, I mean to." Stuttering, he was unsure of how he should explain it. However, as expected of a teacher of the academy and the grandson of an elder having experienced and seen many things, he quickly recovered and turned to look at the waiter. Gesturing majestically, he declared, "All right, Shinloshi's debt is my debt. How much does it cost? I will pay for her." "Shang Shao, you are an esteemed guest of our Hongshan Pavilion. How can we accept your money?" The waiter nodded his head in a panic. These were the lines they had prepared beforehand, so as to flaunt his background and ability before his goddess. That is great. Shang Bin wanted to tug on the subject a while longer to showcase his superiority when Shinbairu's cold voice sounded out once more. "It's okay, I will pay for my expenses, so that others won't claim that I am feigning generosity." At this moment, she retrieved a hairpin from her head and passed it over. "This jade hairpin is worth at least 5,000 gold coins. You can verify it with a specialist. I will be leaving it in your care. First, after I retrieve my money, I will be back to redeem it." This, holding the jade hairpin, the waiter was unsure of what he should do. This wasn't part of the script they agreed on. "Shinloshi, you don't have to do this. I am acquainted with Manager Wu of Hongshan Pavilion, so as long as I speak up, that debt of yours don't mean anything at all." Shang Bin hurriedly stepped forward. "That's your problem. What does it have to do with me?" Shinbairu interrupted his words. Then, she turned to look at the waiter again and said, "I will be leaving first if you aren't going to be looking for a specialist to verify it." The waiter looked at Shang Bin in a panic and the plea in his gaze was clear to see. "What are you looking at me for?" Shang Bin waved his hand quickly with a furious gaze. He continued, "I don't know you at all." "All right." Zhang Xuan didn't expect that a single meal would end in such a fast. Shaking his head, he stepped forward, retrieved the jade hairpin from the waiter and passed it back to Shinbairu. "Why are giving this to him? This meal isn't even worth 1,280 gold coins. Giving him money like this, are you that anxious to be scammed?" "Scammed? Hongshan Pavilion has nearly 10 years behind its establishment. Our prices are fair and we do not discriminate between our customers. There has never been a single person who had such an issue with us before." "So what do you mean by those words?" The moment Zhang Xuan words landed, a middle-aged man walked over with large strides. It was the manager of Hongshan Pavilion, Wu Chu. He had talked it through with Shang Bin and he wasn't supposed to appear initially. However, upon hearing Zhang Xuan talking about a scam, he couldn't hold it in anymore. The events occurring here had attracted the attention of many customers if he didn't show up and allow the other party to speak as he pleases instead. The reputation of the tavern would be solid if that happened. His boss, Elder Hong Hao, would kill him when he returned. What do I mean? Do I really have to voice it out? Zhang Xuan's eyelids lifted up slightly and a lazy atmosphere emanated from him. We use the finest ingredients for every single dish of our Hongshan Pavilion, so that they are served fresh and delicious. Our prices have also undergone the stringent checks of the academy. If you aren't able to explain yourself, regardless of the fact of whether you are a teacher of the academy or not, you don't have to dream about leaving here today. Manager Wu's face darkened. To a tavern, scamming one's customers was a very heavy sin to bear if he didn't settle it now. Hongshan Pavilion could possibly go out of operation when such a reputation spread. He is truly courting death. Initially, he thought that Zhang Xuan would get away scot-free once again. However, seeing Zhang Xuan accuse Hongshan Pavilion of scamming its customer and offending Manager Wu, a glint flashed across Shang Bin's eyes as he watched the situation gleefully. Manager Wu might seem like an amiable person with a good temper, but when the reputation of Hongshan Pavilion was on the line, he would be like a raging bull who didn't know the meaning of retreat. Looks like the fellow who was the first from the last in the academy was in for a ride of misfortune. What is this fellow rambling about? Panic could be seen on Shenbairu's face. For Hongshan Pavilion to be opened in Hongshan Academy at such a tremendous scale, its backing is clear to see at a single glance. Yet you dare to accuse them of scamming their customers in public. Aren't you asking for trouble? A large tavern like this values its reputation a lot. Since you requested for me to say it, then I will spare with the formalities. Despite the Wuchu's threat, Zhang Xuan was unfazed. He walked up to the table and said, "This violet savage bear meat, going by your claims, is prepared by slaughtering a savage bear before soaking it in violet flowers for 3 days. This way, the exterior will be crispy while the interiors will be tender and the meat will be filled with fragrance. However, you all took it out for frying right after soaking it for just a day. Although the texture is still the same, the medical properties of the violet flower has yet to soak in, making it would be useless no matter how many of it one eats. As for this Honghu mandarin fish, you all advertised it as wild mandarin fishes caught in Lake Hong. However, they are actually mandarin fishes that you all have been rearing in Yellow Bay. It is easy to differentiate between the two, as wild mandarin fishes have to battle against their natural predators. King turtle, the fin of the tail of Honghu mandarin fishes tends to be tougher than those that are reared, and its tail would be significantly thicker as well. One only has to slightly look into the matter to know whether what I'm saying is true. As for this clear sautéed nestle tart herb, the ingredients used isn't even nestle tart herb but bitter heart herb. These two plants are actually one of a kind, just that they are cultivated under different conditions, thus the difference in their names. Nestle tart grass grows beside the nests of savage beasts and is taken care by them. Their stems would tend to be thicker and their nutrition value is significantly higher as well. Bitter heart herb grows in the wilderness and is extremely cheap. Its stem is thin and its nutrition value is lower by a huge chunk. For the same plate of vegetable, the difference in their value is almost tenfold. Completely different in comparison. Listing it as nestle tart herb but cooking the dish using bitter heart herb. If this isn't a scam, what else could it be? Casually pointing to any dish, he was able to clearly point out the origin and flaws in it. Upon hearing those words, Manager Wu's earlier aggression faded as his face paled. As the manager of Hongshan Pavilion, he wasn't just involved in attending to the customers, he was also in charge of the affairs in the kitchen. Naturally, he was aware of the authenticity of the Zhang Xuan's words. Not only was he not speaking nonsense, his words were completely true. The boss wasn't aware of these things for his own profit. Wu Chu discreetly got someone to switch them. Not even professional gourmets could tell the differences between Honghu mandarin fish, nestle tart herb and their imitation, thus proving that the substitutes for these two were identical. How could this young man tell? Furthermore, for him to be completely spot on. Damn it. We specially came here from afar to try the authentic nestle tart herb. To think that it would be an imitation. Me too. I've heard that the Honghu mandarin fish is delicious, authentic and fragrant, thus I specially made the journey here. How dare you all try to fool us? Refund, refund. To think that the #1 tavern of Hongshan Academy would resort to using imitations, not to mention that I am a regular customer. I would have never imagined that it was all a scam. Zhang Xuan's words were unhurried and rational with sufficient evidence to back up his claims. The crowd who was watching the show immediately burst into an uproar. Hongshan Pavilion could be considered a reputable tavern. Even in the entire Tanxuan Kingdom, many of its specialties have attracted innumerable experts to make the journey. They would have never imagined that these were all fake. Chapter 35. What is happening? You nonsense. Seeing the crowd breaking out into a commotion, cold sweat dripped down from Manager Wu's forehead. He gritted his teeth and bellowed. He must not admit to it now. The moment he did, Hongshan Pavilion's reputation would be ruined, and his future will be gone with it as well. If only he knew that this teacher was a gourmet, he would have never agreed to Shang Bin's request even if he was beaten to death. You are claiming that what I said was nonsense? Zhang Xuan glanced at him. Indeed, you said that these dishes are imitations, but you don't have evidence to back up your claim. Without evidence, your words are nonsense. Do you think that I wouldn't dare to have you arrested for the crime of slander? Manager Wu said ferociously. Evidence? You want evidence? Fine. Seeing how this fellow was adamant to push on, Zhang Xuan shook his head. Initially, he didn't want to pursue the matter any further. After all, Shenbairu was the one treating, so what doesn't matter to him how much the dishes cost. However, who knew that this fellow would stubbornly claim that he was slandering them? Since that was the case, Zhang Xuan was resolute to prevent him from getting away scot-free. I have already provided the evidence of the few dishes before. Everyone can inspect their food carefully based on the unique traits that I have just brought up. Of course, it's okay if he is reluctant to acknowledge it. After all, even if you all know all these, some gourmets will still find it difficult to distinguish between them. Needless to say, the rest of you. However, Zhang Xuan surveyed the surroundings before casually lifting up the most expensive bottle of wine on the table and declared, everyone would be able to easily discern the authenticity of this bottle of wine. discern its authenticity? Drunk Immortal is the specialty of Hongshan Pavilion. This is a fact known by everyone. Many people specially made the trip here just for the wine. Are you trying to say that the wine is fake as well? A customer couldn't resist asking. Indeed, Drunk Immortal is the trademark of Hongshan Pavilion, so surely it can't be faked? If this turns out to be an imitation as well, I doubt that there can be anything real in here. Another customer spoke up. The wine that was offered to Zhang Xuan's table previously was called Drunk Immortal and its sale was exclusive to Hongshan Pavilion. The wine was rich, delicious and had an exquisite fragrance. This wine played a crucial role to the current reputation and scale of Hongshan Pavilion. If even this wine turned out to be an imitation, that would be going way overboard. I've already said that it would be easy to discern it. As though he had expected the crowd to doubt his words, Zhang Xuan simply responded with a faint smile and raises the bottle. The words Drunk Immortal are written on the cover of the bottle. If this is truly the Drunk Immortal from 100 Well Brewery, it would indeed be worth 1,200 gold coins. But it is a pity that the bottle is filled with Green Crag brew from Purple Bamboo Gazebo. These two wines are similar in terms of their scent and their texture. However, the former is brewed using the valuable and rare-rooted earth, grass and green cicada heart leaf, and it nourishes the body when drunk. On the other hand, if one drinks too much of the Green Crag brew, the venom from the fallen floral grass would attack one's heart and lungs. Over time, the function of one's organs will deteriorate, causing one's cultivation to fall rapidly, thus ending their lives tragically. Using Green Crag brew to imitate Fallen Immortal? I've heard of Green Crag brew. If I remember correctly, its taste is similar with Fallen Immortal. I've always trusted in the quality of the goods of Hongshan Pavilion. I would have never imagined that they would fool their customers like that. This is a fraud. I will be reporting this to the Academy so that an investigation will be conducted. The customers who were watching the commotion, upon hearing that they have been scammed, cried out indignantly. Just because you said that it is Green Crag brew, doesn't mean that it would necessarily be it. Where's your evidence? Manager Wu squeezed out these words between his gritted teeth. Glancing at him, Zhang Xuan replied calmly, wine can be ignited with fire. I haven't touched much of the alcohol in it, so you can ignite this one. The true Fallen Immortal should exude an alluring fragrance, similar to lilies and musk. On the other hand, for Green Crag brew, a chardodo would be released. All those who have noses should be able to discern between the two easily. Manager Wu's body went stiff. The other party's words were completely accurate. However, this method of distinguishing between the two wasn't very well known. Only the makers of Green Crag brew and their vendors were aware of it. Even Wu Chu himself only heard of it coincidentally. How could this fellow know of this method as well? Actually, the wine given to other customers were all true Fallen Immortal after all. This was the trademark specialty of the tavern. After hearing Shang Bin's plan, he intentionally passed this fake wine over to the young man, thinking that he would be unable to discern between the two, so that he would be able to make an earning out of this in the end. Not only was the other party aware of it, he was even able to state the method to distinguish between the two clearly. If Zhang Xuan were to prove himself right, it would be difficult to explain to everyone that what they're drinking was the authentic Fallen Immortal. Why? You don't dare to give it a try? Seeing the look of panic on the other person's face, Zhang Xuan smiled faintly. He casually turned the wine bottle over, allowing the wine to spill onto the floor. Then, he took out an ignitable paper roll and snapped his fingers. Xun. When the wine on the floor came into contact with the flames, it lit up and instantaneously, a stinging odor assaulted the noses of the crowd, leaving them faint-headed. How pungent. This was what we were drinking? Hongshan Pavilion really doesn't respect their customers. For it to be so pungent, it must be poisonous. Refund. I've been drinking your wine here for 3 years. Not only do I want you to return it all back to me, I want additional compensation as well. The entire tavern exploded into an uproar. Everyone rushed forward. What is happening? Cao Xing and Shang Bin felt like they were going mad by the sudden turn of events. They had specially set up this plot to humiliate Zhang Xuan. In the end, not only was he not humiliated, he even managed to stand out instead. Instead, they were shamed like clowns. What is happening? Your head? By the side, Manager Wu had just barely kept his emotions in check, but upon hearing those words, he lost control and kicked them both. Peng. He was a fighter 6 Dan Pixie Rom expert before the two of them could even react. The sight before them went dark and they crashed onto the ground. A giant footprint was left on each of their faces. It was no wonder that Manager Wu would go berserk. If it weren't for these two fellows, such an incident would not have occurred. He could already foresee that not only would his career come to an end, he would also have to face the rage of Elder Hong Hao. After this incident, Hongshan Pavilion's reputation would definitely go into the gutters and their business would no longer be as prosperous as before. The cause of this entire incident was him accepting the request of these two fellows to teach the lad, who was last in the teacher qualification examination, a lesson. How could it be possible for this lad to be the last? Even the first in the examinations couldn't possibly be so incredible. If only he knew in advance that this master had such powerful eyes of discernment, not only would he have not caused Zhang Xuan any trouble, he would have been praying for him to not cause him any. Damn it. Looks like there isn't anyone free to collect money from us right now. Let's go. Seeing how the situation had descended into chaos, Zhang Xuan signaled to Shinbairu, who was still in a state of daze, and walked out of the tavern. Now that the problem had been settled, staying here would just result in more trouble. Thus, it would wiser for them to simply leave. Shinbairu hurriedly caught up to him. Seeing the young man in front her, her eyes were filled with complex emotions. All along, she thought that he was a trash, an ignorant fellow who was the shame of the teaching community. After half a day of interaction, she realized that if he was a trash, then what was she? Didn't it mean that she was nothing at all? Gritting her teeth, she walked up with disbelief still reflecting within her beautiful pitch-black eyes. She asked, "You seem to be quite knowledgeable about food. Could it be that you're a gourmet?" Chapter 36. Gourmet. There were many occupations in this world and Borme was one of them. Bormes were often born sensitive to taste, and their ability to discern flavors far exceeded ordinary humans. Their cultivation might not necessarily be high, but there were some hotels or taverns that would hire them at high salaries so as to ascertain the taste and effects of their ingredients. However, this occupation was one of the least esteemed ones and could only be considered one of the lower 9 paths. There were more than several thousands of occupations in the world. To better classify them, they were split into the upper 9 paths, middle 9 paths and lower 9 paths. Apothecary, blacksmith, formation master and similar jobs, which brought about benefits to battle techniques and one's cultivation, were considered as the conventional upper 9 paths. On the other hand, Borme could only be considered as an unorthodox occupation, thus being classified under the lower 9 paths. Going by Shenbairu's opinion, given how the young man was capable of pointing out the flaws in those dishes and wine, he had to be a Borme. You can take it so. Zhang Xuan didn't explain. The Library of Heaven's Path did more than reflecting one's cultivation. As long as he had tried a dish, its flaws would be reflected in the library. With this, it was a simple task for him to take care of a small manager. Wu, thank you for your help today. Seeing the other party admit to it, Shenbairu thanked him. If it wasn't for this young man's ability to discern delicacies, it would be truly embarrassing for her today. It's nothing. Zhang Xuan waved his hand. You resolved the problem just a moment ago, so it can't be considered as my treat. I'll treat you again next time. Shenbairu said. Treat me again? Zhang Xuan pondered over it and shook his head. Better not. I still treasure my life. Eating with a beauty might be an enjoyable event, but he knew himself the best given his reputation. The other party might simply be speaking out of politeness despite being repulsed by the idea. Not only so, he would have to suffer from the envy of others. If so, he would have to come up with ideas to deal with her pursuers. However, there were still many things that he needed to do at the moment and he didn't have the leisure for such matters. Just when she thought that Zhang Xuan could speak normally, she heard those words and felt a blockade in her chest again as the urge to go berserk surged through her. Many people had asked her out to eat, but she rejected them all. Yet, when she took the initiative to invite him, she felt as though she was begging a stubborn elderly. Detestable. Alright, since we have already eaten, if there's nothing else, I'll be making a move first. I still have many things to attend to. Oblivious to her age, he waved and prepared to take his leave. Wait, I'm not done yet. Suppressing her anger, Shenbairu calmed down her breathing and looked at him with her beautiful eyes. You might have resolved that difficulty in my stead today, and your occupation as a Borme played a huge role in it, but in the end, it is still an unorthodox occupation after all. A fighter should focus on his training. Fighters, upon cultivating to a certain realm, were able to survive without ingesting food, so delicacies did not have much use. Even if he was able to profit out of the occupation for now, it still wasn't a proper path a fighter should be treading on. After interacting with him, she could tell that Zhang Xuan wasn't as useless as the rumors made him out to be. It could be possible that he had devoted his efforts to studying food. That's why his teacher qualification examination results ended up horrendous. Upon such thoughts, despite her overwhelming anger, she couldn't resist advising him. Alright. Knowing that she said those words out of goodwill, Zhang Xuan nodded his head just as he was about to leave. Rapid footsteps sounded out from his back. Zhang Xuan, let's see where you can escape to today. Today, don't even dream about getting away. Following which, a resentful voice echoed in the surroundings. 2 men and 1 beast blocked his path. They were Shangbin and Cao Xung. At this moment, the 2 of them have a giant footprint imprinted on their face, the outlines of it clear to see. Half of their face was swollen red and blood trickled down by edges of their mouth. Not a single hint of their previous dashing and carefree look remained. This was especially so for Shangbin. His injuries from morning have yet to recover, and yet, he suffered another violent kick at this instant. His mouth was crooked to the side and his lips looked like 2 giant sausages, thus pulling him further away from the concept of handsomeness. He had planned everything out perfectly so as to look cool in front of his goddess, who knew that not only would he fail, he even got beaten up to such a state, and his connection with Hongshan Pavilion was severed as a result. If things went wrong, he might even be chastised by his grandfather. How could he take this humiliation lying? The more he thought about it, the angrier he got. Thus, he charged up directly towards Zhang Xuan. Shangbin, what do you intend to do? Shenbairu didn't expect him to come in pursuit to cause trouble. She stepped in front of Zhang Xuan to shield him from Shangbin. Shenloshi, don't block my way. This is a personal grudge between Zhang Xuan and me. It was one thing if he didn't see her, but when he saw her shielding the infamous trash of the academy, Shangbin was further provoked as his eyes slanted to the sides and his mouth crooked further from the overwhelming rage. The intense envy clouding his mind made him go frenzy. He stared coldly at that young man and shouted, Zhang Xuan, are you a man? If you're one, stop hiding behind a woman and have a fair duel to the death with me. Seeing how the fellow before him had lost his rationality, Zhang Xuan widened his eyes and said, so what if I'm hiding behind a woman? This is a part of my capabilities. If you're capable, find one to hide behind as well. Shangbin almost vomited blood. As long as it was a man, if someone insulted him by saying that he was gutless and hid behind the protection of a woman, wouldn't they feel embarrassed and humiliated such that they would rush forward to retaliate out of indignation? Why does common sense not apply to this fellow? How can he speak of something that should have been incomparably shameful so naturally and righteously? How can one be so thick-skinned? Shenloshi, I'll be leaving these 2 for you to deal with. I still have something on, so I'll be taking my leave first. As a transcender, what had he never seen before? Thick-skinned? What a joke. In his previous life, in the information era, have you seen anyone who wasn't shameless? he couldn't be bothered to deal with a problem which someone had taken the initiative to resolve for him. This wasn't fear rather, it wasn't a good time for him to be revealing his level of cultivation. On top of that, Shang Bin's grandfather was an elder. If he were to be forced to a corner, Zhang Xuan would have to waste precious time dealing with the problems that would ensue since someone was shielding him. He was also happy to be spared of the effort. Seeing how shameless the young man was, Shenbairu was also at a loss for words. Just a moment ago, she was still fearful that he would be provoked by Shang Bin's taunt and duel with him. Now, it did seem that she was overthinking it. If this fellow could be provoked, even so's would be able to climb trees. Zhang Xuan, hold it there. If I can't kill you today, I won't be called Shang Bin. Seeing the attitude of the young man, Shang Bin became even more enraged. Veins popped out from his temples and his face turned into a shade of green. Seeing that Shenbairu had no intention of letting him through, he roared, "Sky-shattering lion, kill him. As long as you do it, I will bring you delicacies every day. Furthermore, I will give you the acupoint soothing pill that my grandfather promised me." As a tier 6 savage beast that had been tamed by a human, the sky-shattering lion was capable of comprehending human words. As his grandfather's pet, as long as Shang Bin was kept out of harm's way, it couldn't be bothered with his orders. In order to get it to make a move, he promised all kinds of benefits to him in an instant. Roar. Indeed, hearing his promises, the eyes of the sky-shattering lion lit up. Savage beasts who have reached Pixiu realm, unlike humans, were unable to use the flow of Zenki to break open their acupoints. They could only rely on the growth of their body to gradually pull up their strength. If it were to consume the acupoint soothing pill at this moment, with its effects, its strength would surely soar significantly. Acupoint soothing pill was a pill made specially for Fighter 6 Dan experts. It possessed the effect of soothing one's acupoints, thus allowing one to progress further in Pixiu realm. At this moment, Shang Bin's strength had already reached Fighter 5 Dan Dinglai Pinnacle, just a step off from Pixiu. Thus, Elder Shang Chen spent a huge sum to obtain this medicine, so as to give him a boost. Initially, Shang Bin was reluctant to take it out. However, upon recalling how he was humiliated by Trash, he found himself unable to suppress his emotions. If he didn't get rid of Zhang Xuan today, he feared that he would be unable to uphold his dignity in the academy anymore. This was especially so for the goddess before him. She probably wouldn't even spare him a gaze. How could he tolerate such a situation? Shang Bin, what do you intend to do? Killing a colleague in academy compounds is a huge crime. She didn't expect Shang Bin to be so insane to order the sky-shattering lion to make a move. Shenbairu's eyes narrowed. She wanted to rush forward to protect Zhang Xuan, but was blocked by Shang Bin. Instead, panicking, she bellowed at him. In the compounds, teachers were forbidden from killing one another. To do so was an infringement of the school rules, as well as a severe crime. Zhang Xuan was the one who wanted to kill me to protect me. The sky-shattering lion retaliated. What I did was legitimate self-defense. What can the others say about it? Shang Bin's eyes turned red from insanity. He roared, "Sky-shattering lion, what are you hesitating for? Do it." You, Shenbairu felt her heart turning cold. Too shameless. If he were to really use that as a front, with Elder Shang Chen's interference within the matter, he might really get away with it. In fact, it was possible for him to escape punishment completely. Zhang Xuan could very well die here. After all, it was a tier 6 savage beast. Ordinary Pixiu realm experts weren't even its match. How could one who was the last in the teacher qualification examination withstand it? Roar. Just when she was still in a fluster, the sky-shattering lion roared and dashed over before coming into contact with it. Its powerful aura created a powerful gale that forced the surrounding grass and tree leaves to bow down to it. 9 paths, also known as 3 teachings and 9 paths. This is a real terminology used to classify jobs in ancient China. To put it simply, there are upper 9 paths, middle 9 paths and lower 9 paths in ancient China, and each of these paths refer to an occupation. For example, the top occupations in ancient China. The 9 occupations listed in the upper 9 paths are emperor, saints, secluded masters, oracle, scholar, warrior, farmer, worker, merchant, and they are classified from vertical bar most esteemed, least esteemed vertical bar. Similarly, the middle 9 paths and lower 9 paths have their own set of occupations as well. The 3 teachings refer to Confucianism, Taoism, or Taoism, and Buddhism. Do note that there are different interpretations, versions to the 9 paths, and most of them list Buddha as the first one. Chapter 37, Big Sister Spare Me. Zhang Xuan. Shenbairu tried to break through Shang Bin's blockade to save him, but she was knocked back consecutive times. Shang Bin's cultivation was on the same level as her. He might be spoiled due to his powerful backing, but his strength wasn't false. Even if she possessed the strength to defeat him, she was still unable to break through his blockade within a short period of time, especially if he chose to execute only defensive maneuvers. I am the one who brought harm to you. Seeing how she was unable to save him, Shenbairu was filled with guilt. She thought that the reason why Shang Bin was dealing with this fellow who was the last for the teacher qualification examination was because of her. Otherwise, as someone of such high standing and the grandson of an elder towards an infamous Trash who had no background whatsoever, when there's no connection between the two, why would there be a grudge between them? Yet, after pulling him down into the mud, she was unable to save him. The guilt she was experiencing at the moment tormented her painfully. Why are there no movements? Could it be that Zhang Xuan has already died? The more panicked she got, the more incapable she was of breaking through Shang Bin's blockade. With Shang Bin blocking her sight, she was unable to view the situation over at Zhang Xuan's side. She could only hear complete silence in the surroundings, as though he didn't even struggle against the assault of the sky-shattering lion. There could only be one possibility before Zhang Xuan could retaliate. He was already smacked to death by the sky-shattering lion. After all, even she was unable to withstand a single blow from the tier 6 savage beast, which was equivalent to a Pixie realm expert. Haha, he is already dead. It is too late for you to make a move now. Hearing that there were no movements behind him, Shang Bin's eyes lit up. He knew that the trash would definitely be unable to withstand a single blow from the sky-shattering lion. He laughed heartily out of excitement, judging that there was no need to block Shenbairu any longer. He leapt aside. Zhang Xuan. The moment Shang Bin leapt away, Shenbairu didn't waste time on him and hurriedly rushed forward just when she thought she would see a pool of fresh blood with a miserable corpse lying in the center of it. Her slim figure suddenly froze and she stared in a daze. This what happened? Initially, Shang Bin thought that his goddess would burst into tears from the shock of the sight. However, upon seeing such an expression hanging on her face, Shang Bin quickly turned around to take a look with a single glimpse. His eyeballs widened into huge circles, and he almost fainted from overwhelming astonishment. He saw the incomparably ferocious sky-shattering lion, which had rushed towards Zhang Xuan earlier to rip him into numerous shreds before, lying in front of Zhang Xuan like a pug, licking his hands. Zhang Xuan's other hand was stroking the head and ears of the sky-shattering lion, and unspeakable pleasure appeared on the latter's face. The heck? What happened? Shang Bin was on the verge of tears. This sky-shattering lion was his grandfather's beast pet and it was extremely proud even for Shang Bin himself. Just a simple touch would incur its fury, not to mention stroking its head. After taking possession of it from his grandfather, he had spent half a day of effort on it, feeding it numerous delicacies, yet this fellow didn't even show the slightest bit of gratitude. Disregarding his presence as he pleased, such a proud fellow became a pug before Zhang Xuan? You are here to kill him. To be lying before him and licking his palm. Is this really alright? Shang Bin felt a dizziness spell working up, and he was on the verge of going crazy. Sky-shattering lion. What are you doing? Quickly kill him. He bellowed. The sky-shattering lion didn't move. It continued to laze around, allowing Zhang Xuan to stroke its head freely. You quickly kill him. If you do it, I will buy you anything you want to eat from now on. Shang Bin roared anxiously. So noisy, make him shut up. Zhang Xuan, who was stroking the sky-shattering lion, stood up and waved his hand. Roar. The sky-shattering lion stood up as well and glared at Shang Bin savagely. What are you planning to do? Frightened, Shang Bin immediately retreated several steps. However, before he could get far, the sky-shattering lion dashed forward and took a sweep at him lightly with its paws. Peng. Before Shang Bin could react, he was sent flying backwards like a kite that had its string snapped. His head knocked onto a giant tree and crimson blood filled his entire face. What exactly happened? You are my grandfather's beast pet, Shang Bin cried. This sky-shattering lion was the beast pet that his grandfather passed on to him to protect him logically. It should have listened to his words to deal with the outsider. Why did it listen to the words of an outsider to attack him? Peng. Before he could finish crying, another figure crashed onto the ground in front of him. He was Cao Xia. When that fellow noticed the situation turning awry, he immediately turned around to flee. However, how could he possibly escape from the sky-shattering lion, a tier 6 savage beast? He was sent flying back with a slap. Roar. After sending these two flying, the sky-shattering lion looked as though it had done something glorious. It walked over to Zhang Xuan with a flattering look, as though it wanted to be acknowledged for its accomplishment. Not bad, you did well. Zhang Xuan patted its head. Roar. The sky-shattering lion nodded its head quickly. It walked gallantly to the two lying on the floor, keeping a watch on them with a proud look, reminiscent of a responsible watchdog. Shang Bin and Cao Xia, who were planning to escape, were on the verge of tears. Zhang Xuan knew. How did you do that? Spectating the entire flow of events by the side, the dumbstruck Shenbairu finally recovered and gazed at him curiously. How did I do it? Zhang Xuan scratched his head. This sky-shattering lion is very easy to communicate with. Perhaps, it might be because I am more handsome. Handsome? Shenbairu blinked and her slim figure staggered. The sky-shattering lion is a savage beast. To it, the term handsome should only be applicable to male sky-shattering lions, so what do you being handsome or not have to do with it? Besides, if one must talk about handsomeness, Shang Bin is much more dashing than you. Alright. Farewell. Zhang Xuan didn't continue explaining and turned around to leave. Since the Library of Heaven's Path could peer into the weaknesses of a human, naturally, it could peer into those of the sky-shattering lion as well. This fellow might seem extremely powerful, but in actuality, it had sustained quite a few hidden traumas. Otherwise, it couldn't have possibly willingly served as Elder Shang Chen's beast pet. The library had detected the flaws of it, making use of it. Zhang Xuan casually solved some of the easier ones for it. As a result, the sky-shattering lion chose to obey his commands obediently without the slightest hesitation. In comparison to Shang Bin's promise, no amount of delicious food and pills could compare with a resolved hidden trauma. Of course, this involved his secret as well, so he couldn't possibly reveal the truth to Shenbairu. You don't go. You haven't explained the reason why the sky-shattering lion obeyed to your commands. Seeing him leave, Shenbairu quickly caught up. The more she came into contact with this young man, the more formidable she found him to be. He was a mystery that was becoming more and more difficult to comprehend. Being able to read so many books just by flipping through them, intentionally scoring a 0 in the teacher qualification examinations despite knowing the answers, realizing his identity as a gourmet through a meal, and convincing a tier 6 savage beast to follow his commands easily. What seemed impossible in the eyes of others was accomplished so simply by this young man, leaving others staring in disbelief. How did he accomplish all these? Shenbairu was becoming more and more curious about this young man before her. Big sister. Oblivious to what she was thinking of, upon seeing her chasing him, Zhang Xuan halted his footsteps and said helplessly, I want to live a long life. I'm afraid that I might not live to the next day being beside you. Just spare me. Big sister? You are the big sister. Your entire family is big sisters. Shenbairu's face turned bright red. She was a beauty. She might be slightly older than Zhang Xuan, but she looked no different from a 17 or 18-year-old yet. This fellow addressed her as big sister, thus causing her to go into a frenzy. Fine, I am the big sister, so just let me leave. Zhang Xuan shook his head in frustration. PFT. Upon hearing Zhang Xuan claim that he was the big sister, Shen Bairu chuckled and said, "Fine, you can leave, I will look for you tomorrow." Zhang Xuan, Chapter 38, Reprise Bell. It was a scene of chaos in Hongshan Pavilion. What happened? I have barely been away for a while and such a sight awaited my return. In a room, an elderly was staring coldly at the kneeling manager Wu. He was the mastermind behind Hongshan Pavilion. Elder Hong Hao? Elder, it is like that the grandson of Elder Shang Chen, Shang Bin, has been here. Manager Wu didn't dare to conceal anything and disclosed everything that had happened. This included the affair which he swapped the drunk immortal with green crag brew. Wu Qiu, how dare you? After hearing Wu Qiu's words, Elder Hong Hao's face darkened and he angrily sent a kick towards him. Peng. Manager Wu was immediately sent flying backward, his face paled as he vomited mouthful after mouthful of blood. Elder, spare me. I do not dare hope to be forgiven for my crimes, but that fellow is even viler to expose all of these in public and causing the reputation of our Hongshan Pavilion to be ruined. He obviously disregards you completely. Fourth. After doing such shameful things, you still expect others not to talk about them? Elder Hong Hao's face looked hostile, as though a violent storm was gathering on it. Manager Wu trembled uncontrollably. Changing the contents of the dishes to earn more profits was a decision he made at his own discretion. He thought that he had concealed it perfectly, yet he was exposed by that young man in public. Naturally, he felt great resentment against him. I'll give you 5 days to settle this problem thoroughly. I want the negative impacts to be reduced to the bare minimum. If so, I can consider not to pursue the matter of your corruption. Otherwise, don't even dream of getting away alive. Elder Hong Hao's eyes were cold, like blizzard at night. Standing up, he asked, also, what is the name of that fellow? Is he a teacher of the academy? If he had informed me discreetly, I might have rewarded him with a sum of fortune, but he chose to cause trouble in public instead, soiling the reputation of my Hongshan Pavilion. I will have a good look at him tomorrow to see the one who gave him such guts. Bellowing furiously, a savage aura filled the surroundings. It felt like a frontal assault by a wave of frost, causing one to shiver uncontrollably despite the warm weather. Fighter 7 Dan Tongxuan Realm. This Elder Hong Hao was a Tongxuan Realm expert. It was no wonder that he was able to vie for the position of the principal. Just his level of cultivation itself was already astonishing. It is Zhang Xuan Loshi. Manager Wu quickly said. Zhang Xuan? The one who was the last in the teacher qualification examination? Elder Hong Hao was taken aback. Hongshan Academy had never had a single teacher scoring at the very bottom of the teacher qualification examination throughout its centuries of history since its inception. Thus, even a person like Elder Hong Hao had heard of Zhang Xuan's name. That's him. Manager Wu nodded his head. A trash would actually dare to trample on the dignity of Hongshan Pavilion? Excellent. Clenching his fist, a cold glint flashed across his eyes. A heavy, murderous intent emanated from Elder Hong Hao. If the other party was a star teacher or an influential figure in the academy, he might have some hesitation over punishing him. However, since he was a trash, then don't blame him for being heartless. Sigh, how troublesome. Returning back to his dwelling, Zhang Xuan massaged the center of his eyebrows. He would have never thought it possible for so much trouble to evolve from just a simple meal. Forget it. There's no use pondering over it. I better spend my time thinking about how I can break into Pixiu Realm. Quickly, he dumped all excessive thoughts to the back of his head. Despite being a transcender, he knew that in this world, power reigns over might. Only with sufficient power would the problems of one cease to be. He was currently at Dinglai Realm Pinnacle, and to break through, he would need the cultivation techniques of Fighter 6 Dan. However, an ordinary teacher didn't have the qualification to browse through the 6 Dan cultivation techniques of the academy. They could jot down a copy of it only with the approval of an elder. In the previous examination, he only had the strength of a Fighter 3 Dan. If he were to rush to an elder to ask for a 6 Dan cultivation technique now, he might end up being researched like a guinea pig. Many troubles would grow out of it. Furthermore, even with the approval of the other party, with just one copy he was still unable to cultivate. Based on the first 5 dans of Hongshan 9 Dan formula, this cultivation technique possessed too many flaws. Without the cross-references from numerous other cultivation techniques to seek the correct cultivation method, there wouldn't be any results in his training even if he were to train non-stop for several years. To him, the most pressing matter at hand was to seek a huge pile of Fighter 6 Dan cultivation techniques and draw comparisons among them to deduce the correct cultivation method. I've heard that quite a bit of trading is done in Tangxu and Royal City, and cultivation techniques are one of the goods that are being traded. It would solve quite a bit of problem if I am able to purchase a few 6 Dan cultivation techniques. Suddenly, upon recalling something, Zhang Xuan's eyes lit up. Hongshan Academy was located in the capital of Tangxuan Kingdom, Tangxuan Royal City. Tangxuan Royal City was an extraordinarily prosperous city with numerous large commercial cities in here. All kinds of trade were being carried out. 6 Dan cultivation techniques might be rare, but it was still sold in numerous shops here. Furthermore, to Zhang Xuan, there wasn't really a need for him to buy them as long as he managed to flip through them. It would be as good as gaining possession of the secret manual. With the Library of Heaven's Path, the quality and price of the secret manual no longer matter as long as there was sufficient quantity. He would be able to derive the correct path out of the innumerable errors, and the Heaven's Path divine art would be automatically compiled, thus allowing him to cultivate swiftly. It is still early. Let's see if I am able to get a few books today. At this point, Zhang Xuan stopped hesitating and stood up immediately. The sun had just set and the nightlife had just begun. Since he was free anyway, it was a good opportunity to stroll through the commercial cities. Perhaps he might even find some useful items. Taniu Commercial City was the largest trading market in Tangxuan City. It was said that as long as one possessed sufficient money, he was able to buy everything he desired here. Stepping into the market, Zhang Xuan felt his vision blurring from the sight of the innumerable goods laid out before him. His previous self was just an ordinary teacher. His wages were low and he was treated poorly as a result. He had never been to such a grand place before. Thus, Zhang Xuan found himself incapable of identifying most of the goods on sale here. There were many small vendors in the commercial city. A vendor would sit in front of each of these booths and all kinds of goods were laid out before them. Weapons, pills, herbs, armor, beast skin, beast pills. Almost everything that was required for cultivation could be found here. Just that there were too many of them. It was difficult to ascertain which of them were of superior quality and which of them were of inferior quality. I may be unable to discern between the good and the bad, but the Library of Heaven's Path may be capable of it. Such a thought flashed through his mind. Thus, Zhang Xuan immediately walked over to a booth. This gentleman here, what are you looking for? I have everything you need here, and I guarantee your satisfaction with my goods. The vendor quickly welcomed his presence. I'll just take a casual look. Zhang Xuan smiled. He casually picked up an object in the booth. It was a circular bell of average size. This bell is specially forged by a blacksmith and has extraordinary abilities. It is on sale for just 50 gold coins. I can assure you that the price is fair. I offer the very same price to everyone passing by. If you're interested in it, I can give you a special discount. It'll be yours for just 20 gold coins. The vendor coaxed. Zhang Xuan didn't respond to his words. Rather, he twirled the bell around his hand. Weng. The library in his mind jolted and a book appeared in it. Reprise bell. It is able to generate the same tune over and over again, causing one to feel dizzy-headed. It is effective against Phi 2-1 Dan. It is created by a Wanmo craftsman of Blue Cloud Workshop. It is made of Eugene metal. Flaws, no one. The duration required for the reprise sound to take effect is long, requiring at least an incense's time, making it an ineffective weapon in battle. No 2. It doesn't differentiate in its attacks. The wielder will take damage from it as well. 15 minute. Indeed, it is possible. Zhang Xuan smiled. It didn't matter even if he was unfamiliar with all these items. As long as he touched them with his hands and picked them up, the library would compile a corresponding book on it. Furthermore, this book detailed the history, composition and all kinds of flaws of the item in question comprehensively with just a single look. It was apparent to see if the item was valuable or not. Those who were unaware of the truth might just buy it with the vendor's previous offer of 20 gold coins only by looking at the contents recorded in the book. Did Zhang Xuan realize that this toy wasn't even worth 2 gold coins? What's specially forged by a blacksmith? Blue Cloud Workshop is an organization that specializes in the production of fake goods. Furthermore, Wanmo craftsmen are the ones with the worst craftsmanship of them all. Those who specialized in the creation of goods and handicraft were termed as craftsmen. They were classified into 9mo, with 1mo being the worst and 9mo being the best. How valuable could a creation of a 1mo craftsman be? With the library here, I won't have to worry about purchasing fake goods. Zhang Xuan chuckled. This world was similar to his previous one. With authentic goods come imitations given his previous ability of discernment. Needless to say, the authentic ones. He might not even be able to tell the strengths and weaknesses of an imitation. However, with the assistance of the library, he didn't have to worry about it anymore. Just that, he needed to come into contact with the item for a book to be compiled on it. The number of items in this market total up to at least 10 million. If he had to touch every single one of them, wouldn't he tire himself to death? Besides, if he were to just look at the goods, he wouldn't attract much attention. However, if he touched everything his sight caught, it probably wouldn't take long for the security enforcement team of the commercial city to think of him as a lunatic and drive him out of the city. Chapter 39, Frigid Sun Mother Grass. Right, do you sell frigid sun grass here? Shaking his head to dispel the additional thoughts in his mind, Zhang Xuan asked. On top of miscellaneous items, this vendor also sold some herbs. After finishing those books in the Compendium Pavilion, he had already found a solution to Zhao Ya's problem with a pure yin body. She should cultivate a gentle and neutral cultivation technique. This way, the problem of the accumulation of yin energy should be solved. However, she had already cultivated a pure yin cultivation technique for a long time and the meridians in her body have already adapted to it. If an abrupt change were to be introduced, her body might sustain a severe trauma and her cultivation would fall steeply. To prevent this from occurring, some preparations have to be made in advance. One of them was to nourish her meridians through medicinal herbs. Frigid sun grass grew in cold regions despite favoring sunny conditions. As a result, the warm and cold spiritual energy contained within it clashed, causing the amalgamation of yin and yang, thus making it the ideal choice for nourishing her meridians. Since he was in the commercial city now, it was a good time for him to ask around about it. Frigid sun grass. It is a coincidence that you ask this, not to brag, but I can guarantee you that I am the only vendor in Taniu commercial city that has this good. I procured them a few days ago from a dangerous region in Danxiuan Forest. I have a total of 10 stalks and each stalk costs 100 gold coins. How many do you need? The vendor smiled and turned around to take out a box. Opening it, a few fresh-looking plants were revealed within. White flowers with red stems and leaves. Let me take a look first. Zhang Xuan only knew about the frigid sun grass through reading books, so he wasn't very familiar with it. He reached out to grab a stalk and placed it on his palm. Weng. The library jolted and a book appeared. Frigid sun grass, harvested from an unknown valley 200 kilometers into Tanxiuan Forest, aged 2 floors. The name of the herb was written on the cover of the book, and the location of its procurement and its flaws were recorded in it. It is frigid sun grass. This fellow isn't lying. Confirming that there was no mistake with the name on the book, Zhang Xuan knew that the vendor owner wasn't lying to him. This was the authentic medicinal herb, so he nodded his head just when he was about to speak. His eyes happened to glance on the interiors of the box. Why does this stalk of frigid sun grass look slightly withered? Could it be that your procurement method is incorrect, causing its death? There was a specific method to harvesting medicinal herbs. If the method was wrong, the medicinal properties of the herb might be lost, causing its price to drop steeply. The stalk of frigid sungrass he was talking about was withered, thin and slightly yellow, seemingly immature. Furthermore, it didn't look fresh at all with a shriveled large head. It seemed as though it would die at any moment. This gentleman here must be joking. I depend on this for a living, so how could I possibly get it wrong? This stalk of herb isn't a good condition from the very start. It was already like that when I procured it initially. If you want it, I will sell it to you at half price, 50 gold coins. The vendor said. Zhang Xuan picked up the yellowish and withered stalk of frigid sungrass. Weng. Frigid sun mothergrass. The origin of other frigid sungrass is harvested from an unknown valley 200 kilometers into Tangxuan forest. Aged 15. Flipping open the book, the name of the herb and details on it were recorded. Frigid sun mothergrass. Zhang Xuan's eyes lit up. He had read it on the books previously. This extremely valuable and rare herb was the core of all other frigid sungrass. If this herb were to be used in the creation of a medicine, its effectiveness would at least be 10 times the latter. He didn't expect to stumble upon this treasure when he was just casually looking for herbs. Furthermore, this herb was 15-year-old. Just by this determined its extraordinary worth. If Zhao Yao were to use the frigid sungrass to nourish her meridians, she would still require the augmentation from several other means to successfully change her cultivation technique. However, with this stalk of frigid sungrass, the problem could be easily solved. She wouldn't even need the augmentation from other means. This was the most suitable medicinal herb for her. No questions about it. Wrap this stalk up for me. Although he was agitated, his face still remained expressionless as he casually passed it back to the vendor. If the other party realized that this was a mother stalk and not a sickly one, its price would instantly shoot up by 10 times, and even so, he might still be unable to purchase it from him. As a four-halves youngster who grew up in the modern civilized world, he wouldn't do himself any injustice when he was able to profit out of something. 50 gold coins. Seeing how well dressed the young man seemed to be, he thought that he would purchase a few stalks. He didn't expect that he would just buy a sickly one. Pursing his lips, he wrapped it casually, the warmth from before absent on his face. Even a vendor judged his own customers when doing sales. The person before him wasn't even willing to buy a good medicinal herb, thus making it clear to see that he was a poor bloke. Since that's the case, it would just be a waste of time to try to coax him otherwise. Alright. Grabbing the herb, Zhang Xuan reached out to his pocket and awkwardness immediately showed on his face. Due to being too absorbed in the library, he forgot about the matter of money. As a low-level teacher, his wage was low. Furthermore, due to scoring a 0 in the teacher qualification examination, his fortunes were penalized severely. In other words, he didn't even have 10 gold coins in his pocket. Needless to say, 50. Is there anything wrong? Sensing that something was amiss from his face, the vendor asked, cough cough, can you sell it to me for 8 gold coins? Zhang Xuan counted the gold coins he retrieved from his pocket, only having 8 pieces of them. 8? You must be joking. Since you didn't bring any money, why are you trying to buy anything at all? Seeing the few coins placed on the other party's palm, the vendor owner was on the verge of doing a somersault and crashing to the floor. He had met with miserly customers, but he had never met with such a miserly one. Trying to buy frigid sungrass with just 8 gold coins? You must be dreaming. Even if this stalk is sickly, it is still worth far beyond this price. Snatching back the herb, he waved his hand with an annoyed look. Scram, if you don't have any money, I don't have the efforts to be arguing with you over this. Cough cough. It is true that I didn't bring sufficient money, but are you sure that you don't want to sell it to me? Seeing the attitude of the vendor, Zhang Xuan shook his head. Nonsense. Even if this stalk looks awful, it still contains medicinal properties. At worst, it can still be sold for 30 or 40 gold coins. Yet, you offer me 8 gold coins? What a joke. Hurry up and leave, or else I will be calling for the security enforcement team. Seeing how this fellow was reluctant to leave despite being broke, he angrily chased him away, in order to prevent people from coercing others to buy or sell goods, as well as to deter troublemakers. Most large commercial cities operated a security enforcement patrol team in their perimeter. As long as one called out for them, they would appear quickly. Even if you were a Fighter 5 Dandingli realm expert, you would be chased out of the commercial city instantly. Furthermore, to make a move on the security enforcement team meant making a move on the entire commercial city. Normally, no one would have the guts to stand up against them. Upon seeing how this fellow refused to leave despite not possessing sufficient money, he was certain that he was here to cause trouble, so he opened his mouth to call for the security enforcement team. Don't call for the security enforcement team, I'm really interested in buying it. Zhang Xuan interrupted him with a calm and steady look. He chuckled softly. I might not have sufficient money, but I'm not here to cause trouble. Do you believe that if I were to open my mouth, not only will you be willing to sell it to me, you would even offer to give it to me for free? Give it to you for free? Are you still in the midst of your sleep? The vendor didn't expect the poor bloke to say such words. He looked at the young man before him with an attitude as though he was looking at an idiot, and sneered coldly. If I were to really give it to you for free, I'll call you grandpa. In his opinion, this fellow must have a screw loose, not mentioning how he didn't bring sufficient money to purchase goods. He even thought that he would give it to him for free. I am not insane. Why would I give it to you for free? Who do you think you are? Call me grandpa. You don't need to do that. Zhang Xuan shook his head. He looked at the vendor with a bright smile and said, you will give it to me for free because I said so. If you doubt my words, I will take 2 steps. Cough cough. Let's see what will happen after I give you a punch. Dash. 4 halves refer to dream, moral, culture and discipline. Originated from Deng Xiaoping in 1980. Chapter 40. The master is here. Give me a punch. The vendor didn't know what the young man was up to. Indeed. Zhang Xuan nodded his head. You are trying to make a fool out of me. Seeing the serious look on the other person's face, the vendor's rage came surging out and he sent a fist towards Zhang Xuan. He had seen crazy people before, but he had never seen such a crazy person. You still want me to let you give me a punch? Why don't I beat you up to death instead? Putting all of his strength into his punch routine, the wind rustled from the force of his blow, thus exposing his level of cultivation. Fighter 3 Dan Zenki Realm Primary Stage. Not bad. Smiling faintly, Zhang Xuan moved his body slightly to dodge the attack. He had already reached Fighter 5 Dan Ding Lai Realm Pinnacle naturally. The strength of a Fighter 3 Dan Primary Stage could not hurt him. He assumed that the young man was here just to cause trouble, so he thought that he would just be a delinquent without cultivation. However, upon seeing him dodge his attack easily, he immediately realized that the young man's cultivation was on a higher level than his. The vendor stopped as bewilderment overwhelmed him. A fellow who had at least reached the level of Fighter 3 Dan couldn't possibly be really trying to buy stuff with just 8 gold coins. If I'm not wrong, you are from Xiaopinyi. The moment the vendor made a move, a book about him was compiled in the Library of Heaven's Path, getting what he had intended for. Zhang Xuan smiled faintly. How did you know? The vendor was taken aback. Xiaopinyi was one of the provincial cities around Danxuan Royal City. It wasn't a large city and there were at least 80 of such cities around the capital. The vendor was puzzled by how Zhang Xuan could pinpoint it out accurately. He couldn't resist looking down to study his appearance, but there didn't seem to be any defining traits on him that would reveal his place of origin. It doesn't matter how I know it. Zhang Xuan activated his acting cool mode. He looked at the other party once again in a calm and dignified demeanor. Half a year ago, you probably met with danger in Tanxuan Forest and was bitten by a cold bamboo snake. Although you managed to escape with your life, your kidneys were damaged. If I'm not wrong, when you are doing that, it is difficult for you to showcase your masculinity. The vendor staggered backward. His eyes were wide and so great that they were on the verge of falling to the floor. It was true that he was bitten by a cold bamboo snake in Tanxian Forest half a year ago. After which the latter half of Zhang Xuan's words were true as well. However, other than him and the lady from the brothel, he had never talked about it with another person. How did this young man know about it? Could it be that he is a seer? Someone who is capable of divining the future? The vendor was still filled with disbelief. Why? Are my words wrong? Seeing the expression on the other party's face, Zhang Xuan knew that what was written in the Library of Heaven's Path wasn't wrong. Thus, he expressed a look of pity and said, if you find what I have said inaccurate, I can do without the medicinal herb and leave right now. However, your only chance at treating your problem will disappear as well. Sigh, you won't be able to be a man from henceforth. Don't blame me for not reminding you now. I don't sigh. Don't go. Hearing that the other party was capable of treating him, the vendor's body trembled in agitation as he hurriedly took a step forward. You really treat me? To a man, nothing was more pathetic than losing one's potency these days. He dared not respond to the invitations of his friends, afraid that his problem would be exposed in front of them. Suffering silently, he had looked for many different physicians, but they all came to the same conclusion, that his symptoms were hard to treat and the only solution was amputation. He dared not believe that a casual buyer would point out his problem directly and even claim that he was capable of treating it. I won't force you to believe me. However, since I am able to tell what is wrong with you, naturally, I have my own ways to treat it as well. Zhang Xuan declared. Gongtsai, I plead you to help treat me as long as you can treat me, not just that single stalk of frigid sungrass. You can take all of my herbs. The vendor lunged forward in panic, the plea in his eyes clear to see. There were too many incredible people in the world. The words of the young man were logical since he was able to see through his problem. He definitely had a way to treat it. Besides, he had no choice but to grasp onto every straw of hope that he could find. After all, this concerned his future happiness. You were bitten by the cold bamboo snake. This creature inherently possesses cold attribute. When you were bitten by it, cold energy erupted into your body, causing you to lose your physical function. Furthermore, it is unable to be dispelled by any medicinal herb, thus even quite a few apothecaries will find themselves helpless before it. However, what is bizarre about this snake is that even though its entire body is cold, its gall is warm. As long as you find another snake, kill it and consume its gall, you are able to expel the cold energy from your body completely. Your damaged kidney will gradually recover and you will be able to showcase your masculinity as a man once more. Zhang Xuan said. There were many antidotes to the poison of the cold bamboo snake, but the best antidote of all lied in its body. Its gall was the crux to counteracting its unique cold energy. This was written on one of the manuals in Hongshan Compendium Pavilion. Upon the thought of cold bamboo snakes, this information popped up into his mind. This was also precisely the reason why he only mentioned the gallbladder of the cold bamboo snake. Otherwise, with the Library of Heaven's Path capability of displaying innumerable flaws, there was a multitude of remedies he could provide him. He need not specifically choose this one. Eating the snake gall of a cold bamboo snake? The vendor was still in a state of disbelief. So simple? If this was true, why did none of the many physicians he had visited say so? There should be cold bamboo snakes on sale in this commercial city. If you doubt my words, you can buy one of them and try it right now. I will only leave after we verify it. Zhang Xuan said. Medicinal herbs weren't the only things on sale in Taniu Commercial City. There were also all kinds of treasures, savage beasts and animals. Cold bamboo snake was one of the lower tier savage beasts. Although it contained lethal poison within it, it could be used in concocting medicines, so there were people selling it. Fine, wait for a moment. After hesitating for a moment, the vendor turned around and left. A short moment later, he returned with a cage, and a cold bamboo snake was coiling around in it. As a Zenki realm fighter, as long as he was prepared, killing a cold bamboo snake wasn't a difficult task. It didn't take long for the snake gall to be extracted without any hesitation. The vendor swallowed it directly. Soon, the vendor's eyes lit up. The vendor seems to have already gotten an answer to whether the remedy worked or not. I thank Gongtsai for your help. These frigid sungrass are all yours. With his eyes glowing with excitement, the vendor nearly knelt down in gratitude from the joy surging through him. This was a problem that had been plaguing him for a long time. In fact, there was even a period when he didn't want to live anymore. In order to treat this deficiency of his, he spent several years' worth of his savings, and never did he expect to be treated just like that. See, I didn't lie when I said that you would give them to me for free. Zhang Xuan helped himself to the generous gifts of the vendor and grabbed the box filled with frigid sungrass. Knowledge was a type of wealth as well. It was natural for Zhang Xuan to receive some compensation from the vendor after solving the illness that was plaguing him. Gongcai, I apologize for my inadequacy for not realizing your capabilities. I beg for your forgiveness. The vendor scratched his head in embarrassment. Just a moment ago, he was still declaring resolutely that if he were to give the frigid sungrasses to Zhang Xuan for free, he would call him grandpa. Never would he expect for Zhang Xuan's words to truly come to be. It's nothing. Zhang Xuan casually waved his hand to show that it was a small matter. Just as he was about to leave, a crowd of people suddenly dashed forward, their faces red from agitation. Quick, Master Mo Yang is here. One would be able to prosper through the guidance of Master Mo Yang. This is an opportunity not to be missed. This time, as long as it is a treasure that Master Mo Yang appraised, I will buy it no matter how much it costs. Indeed, I felt regretful after missing that opportunity by the previous time. The crowd discussed as they ran over. What is happening? Seeing how the crowd were agitated as though a star had arrived, Zhang Xuan was puzzled. Master Mo Yang has come. Even the eyes of the vendor were glowing with excitement. Gongcai, gentlemen,